Members of Congress pay close attention to the mail, the telephones, the telegrams, the fax machines, and all of these are flooding Washington with negative comments about the president, foreign military involvement, and attitudes generally sour. And so Congress is pretty sour, as we hear in our background report from ABC News diplomatic correspondent Barrie Dunsmore. Barrie?
David, nothing arouses the sharks in Congress like the smell of failure.
We need a strong hand in foreign policy. Christopher should resign.
The problem is materially compounded by a president who regrettably has been indecisive and vacillating.
The president ought to be given not just a warning light, but sort of a red light for the next few months.
Early in the week, Senate Minority Leader Bob Dole seized the moment to propose legislation limiting the president's options in Haiti.
It limits obligation of funds for military operations in Haiti without congressional authorization in advance.
The administration fought Dole off on constitutional grounds. But the real issue facing President Clinton is the perceived vacuum in foreign policy which ambitious politicians and pundits will continue to exploit. Recently, the entire Bush foreign policy team abruptly ended its self-imposed moratorium on sniping at its successors. President Bush suggested that his noble goals for the Somalia mission were in danger of being messed up. His Secretary of State, James Baker, talked of the disaster in Mogadishu and the Haitian fiasco. And former Defense Secretary Richard Cheney described aspects of Clinton policy as dumb, stupid, and very embarrassing. In Europe, too, there are growing complaints about Mr. Clinton's leadership.
He tends to be easily blown off course by each particular crisis, and the general impression, therefore, the outside world is getting, I think, is one of muddle or drift.
It is generally agreed that with the end of the Cold War, the conduct of foreign policy became much more complicated. The Clinton people argue that on the big issues, Russia and the Middle East, they've been getting it right, although it might be said that what's been happening there has been largely out of their hands. As for Clinton's so-called foreign policy disasters, Bosnia, Somalia, and Haiti, perhaps in fairness, these should be seen in historical context. John Kennedy was faced with the debacle of the Bay of Pigs invasion 3 months into his term. Lyndon Johnson's entire presidency was consumed by the Vietnam War. Likewise, much of Richard Nixon's time was plagued by Vietnam. Jimmy Carter was paralyzed by the Iran hostage crisis, and Ronald Reagan was shaken by the slaughter of 241 U.S. Marines in Beirut. Even frequent critic Henry Kissinger makes a sympathetic historical analogy.
First of all, I think Clinton ought to be given a chance. It took Truman nearly 4 years to develop the new architecture of the last period of innovation.
Still, the president's critics in Congress are not looking at the history books. They are mainly watching the polls, which to no one's surprise after recent events in Somalia and Haiti show a sharp drop in public confidence in the president's handling of foreign affairs. This policy by pollster is a great frustration for policymakers, present and past.
These people can drive you absolutely batty. They're all over the lot, and if I may be blunt about it, the ability of the Congress of the United States to have any strategic view of these sorts of things is virtually nil.
But Clinton's handling of Somalia, Haiti, and Bosnia is also troubling to responsible observers who are not running for president or trying to get on the evening news. And repeatedly, one hears the administration being faulted for the gap between the rhetoric and the reality of its policies. For example,
bold tyrants and fearful minorities are watching to see whether ethnic cleansing is a policy the world will tolerate. If we hope to promote the spread of freedom, if we hope to encourage the emergence of peaceful ethnic democracies, our answer must be a resounding no.
Stirring words. But Christopher was a complete failure at persuading the Europeans to take a stronger position on Bosnia. And every time the United Nations and NATO have threatened to use air power to enforce UN resolutions in Bosnia, the Serbs have ignored the threat with no consequences.
The signals from an administration whose rhetoric is very activist, but whose actions are quite passive and cautious, the signals from all this worry world leaders.
The signal that has up to now gone forward is that we cannot define our objectives clearly, and that we tend to panic at the first sign of serious opposition.
And so the Clinton foreign policy gets rather low marks. But interestingly, people from both sides of America's foreign policy establishment appear to agree on 2 points. Nothing has happened so far which has seriously threatened the national security of the country. And there is still time for this president to get his act together. David?
Barrie, thank you.